Everyone, we'll get the show on the road here. It's 2:03. We don't want to keep you waiting. People are still coming in. Welcome to Cerulean Arts. My name is Mike Kobuz, and this is Tina Rocha. We are the gallery. We're happy to be hosting today's tour and talk with, hang on one sec.
Uh-oh.
Okay, here we are. Today's tour and talk with Kassem Amoudi, Jean Burdick, Leah MacDonald, Michael Moore, and Nancy Neill. So what we're going to do is, first we're going to tour the exhibitions. So Tina's going to walk through the gallery space and visit each artist's gallery, and they will speak about their work. And that'll take a half hour or 40 minutes or so. And then we're going to open up the breakout rooms where you can visit with the artists individually. So I'd ask that you please stay muted during the tour portion, unless you're one of the artists who's speaking, because we pick up your background noise. And we are recording the tour, and we'll post it on our YouTube channel after the fact, probably tomorrow. So if you missed it, you can see it again, or if someone you know missed it, you could let them know about that. And is that it? Okay, I think that's it for the public service announcement. So I'm going to spotlight Tina's video, and we'll head through the gallery. The first artist we're going to visit today is Leah McDonald. Hello, Leah.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Did you warm up a bit now?
Yes, I have my chair warmer on in my car, and I'm really happy.
That's good.
I'm so happy.
So we're heading into your room now. You can feel free to talk about the work we're seeing.
Okay, so since this year I had a lot of time to teach and work on Zoom with some of my artist people, and I incorporated some new processes into my encaustic arts and photography arts. So some of these pieces include some jelly plate printing, which has been super exciting for me. Another form of printmaking and sort of botanical form and shape images that I could use to collage. So a lot of these works have quite a bit of collage underneath all of those layers of wax, and some poetry in there, some hidden words, and yeah, so I use I work on wood for the most part, with paper, and I layer, you know, starting with a bunch of different pieces of collage paper. And so the printmaking has just added to my, you know, prolific and sort of collections of imagery. So sometimes photography. This one's actually a photograph that I took with it. And then I love the idea of the triptych and working, separating the image, right, and creating these sort of individual pieces within the piece. And it was fun with this one too. Like there was a couple times where I put it in different order. I felt like it was a little bit like a puzzle. Like the bottom was pretty much the bottom, but the two middle pieces I felt could interchange, which was kind of fun. My process involves, you know, layering and encaustic wax and pigment sticks. I use R&F, oily, waxy pigment sticks, sometimes for color, as well as pan pastels. So there's a lot of opportunities to add colors or shift colors, or to sort of paint up parts of the image that interest me. And this series I photographed this year because usually I photograph a lot of female figures, and I work quite a bit with models. So because COVID, I worked like less with the figure and more with, you know, fashion items or clothing, dresses, things around my studio. It was a quieter time, more introspection.
Yeah, how did you get involved with encaustic in the first place?
That's a great question, Mike. So I was a photography major. I have my BFA and my MFA in photography. And for whatever reason, like when you're in a graduate program or an educational art program, there tends to be a trend of what people are doing. And I didn't exactly fit the trend. And I feel like in a positive sort of rebellious phase, I really went out on a limb to try to be super experimental. And so I worked very hard to develop my own voice and use a bunch of media. I think because of my love of the dark room and alchemy, when I first discovered encaustic, it was so similar. It just spoke to me in terms of heat and adding and subtracting and manipulating the imagery. And it just, I don't know, it just was challenging for me. So I was always enticed by its sort of wild side. Like it's as much as I want to manage it, it's hard to manage. So I think that's what keeps me going with it. And I am always learning within the medium, which I also find very exciting.
You have a lot of wonderful textures in your pieces. How do you achieve that?
Really layering. Like this piece that we just looked at was, I think, is like a really new type of work for me. And I don't know if anybody can tell, but I actually use the same photograph on different scale. So I will print an image small, medium, and large. And usually I print them in black and white, and then I'll start to collage them. I also really, because of the printmaking too, I've really been focusing on layering and sort of background, midground, foreground, and how to create depth in the pieces. Because I feel like wax wants to flatten everything to a surface and lower the contrast. So I've been really trying to play around with how to create 3 dimensions that draw you in, that create like a universe or a space that you want to be in and explore. So I've just been practicing and trying different techniques, but collage helps. And you know, scale, I think using images in the collage that are of a variable scale, I also think is helpful.
I mean, the work has a very sort of dreamy, evocative quality.
Yeah, I feel like I've wanted to move towards abstraction as much as I'm capable. You know, as I've worked with a lot of documentary work and a lot of portrait work and nude photography, I feel like I'm trying to evoke, yeah, these sort of abstract, soft, peaceful spaces of beauty and like soft colors and texture. So thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's a beautiful show.
Thank you. I've always been very shy about color. So I feel like this is like a lot of color for me because my background is in black and white photography. That's like where I start. But I do think I have, like this one in particular, like that soft blues. I definitely have like favorite colors. And I would have to say peach or like light orange. And my mom, actually my mom, Barbara, I don't know if she's on here right now, but she is often my, you know, my critic and my consultant and my friend, but she really likes yellow. So yellow has been an interesting addition to I kind of feel like it's a good one.
Well, I think the certain areas of color, it's like when you have a dream and some things are in color and some things aren't, and some things are in focus and some things aren't. It sort of
Yeah.
has that sort of in and out quality of reality and dream or abstraction.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's like exactly what that's exactly like what I would hope people feel in the work. And I feel like I like to start with an image, a photographic image that is reality or real, and then take it to this imaginary place. So if that's great. That's exactly how I would describe my desire for the work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Leah.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to see the rest of the tour. Very nicely done.
All right, so now we're heading over to Kassem Amoudi's exhibition. Kassem? Kassem, you're muted. You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, okay, now we
There we are.
yeah. So like my work really, like it's probably evolved through the years. It took different shapes until I got to where I am now, actually. And like distilled all of that into really like the most powerful two things in painting, which is really like space, the push and pull, and color. Of course, like if you add to that, like sometimes like there is like the spontaneous, and like stuff like that, the contrast with darks, with lights, like there are a lot of things involved too, like in the making of the painting. But these two aspects actually inspire and influence me a lot, color, how like to put colors that really pleasing to the eye, And I do like use the natural way of coloring, like where like the rainbow colors, the color wheel, the sequence, these are really great to start with, of course, like we can do a lot of variation with that, but like you see some of the masters like Kandinsky, Champagnestein, Bonnard, they never put really green without putting a yellow next to it. And the yellow, they put orange next to it. So it's really like that sequence is very important in painting, like if you are really a colorist, like you love colors, And of course, the opposite is true too. Like you can use really not the sequence, like in the color wheel, but the opposite colors, like with contrast, like complementary colors, like blue and orange, but the thing is like not to make them the same size. Like you have to have something bigger, like with this painting, for example, it's dominated by that green turquoise kind, and like the color, like the red or the orange, it's really enhancing it because it's small. It's like you're adding spice, to a nice dish, But if the red was kind of like the same size, like the green, they will fight each other. It's not good, So with complementary colors, like I think like it's really good, to do like a big and a small. They will enhance each other, like the main actor and supportive actor, stuff like that, I do this a lot, like in my painting, like dominated by red here, for example, and there is a little bit like of that blue or red, orange, and blue, and with the other one dominated most by blue here, like you will see, like there is a less of the red, they're not like really like, so they don't fight each other, they enhance each other. Of course, I'll be talking more about the process, like how I start a painting, what do I do next, and how I resolve it at the end. I will say this in the next thing when we talk individually in the breakout rooms. But yeah, like I really like thought like I knew art like a long time ago. I knew that, but I really always found like I really don't know anything, you know, like all what I know is really very small, you know, not much really in comparison to what's in there. So I keep learning and learning and learning. It's right that I teach, you know, painting for 20 years probably here at PAFA and different places, you know. But I'm really still learning, and I see things like every day, you know, like even while teaching, you know, I still learn really like about painting, you know. There is no one point in time that where you can say really, oh, I know it. And I know it now, things get easier. Actually, things do not get easier. Every painting is a struggle, you know, whether you started like this year or after 20 years or you become a master, you know, like every painting is a struggle really, you know, like and a new thing. Because for me too, like it's painting, a good painting is the painting we discover more than the one we plan. I know like both are right, you know, but for me, like I discover my painting, you know, I never plan. I do not know what I'm gonna do like in the beginning, you know, and so I just like do things, you know, like more spontaneous, drips, stuff like that, washes, thick and thin in the background. And then I really like, start putting colors and playing with the colors, contrast, complementaries, or the sequence of the rainbows, you know, like, and so I really like what I have been doing lately. I did like, I do a series of paintings, like this show is specifically, it's the Stripes series, Stripes. I once called it Fences, you know, but I do like the stripes too, like, so I'm calling it the Stripes series, you know. And before that, I did On the Way Home series, that longing we have to where we came from, you know, like it has two like metaphorical meaning really. We're in the way home, you know, because the home is outside somewhere there, but actually the home is here inside of us, you know, like too, you know, like, and I did the series with the windows and doors, series with blues. So I do like series of paintings, usually around like 10 to 15 paintings of the same kind of series. Then I move on to another series, but they all kind relate to each other. Actually, sometimes you can categorize this with this series or with that series because they feed each other and made from each other actually, like one leads to the other, you know, so there are elements of this in that and in that in this, you know. Some of these sizes actually, like this one, like I have some 48 by 48, even though I have really a small, like in the basement, I work my studio here, like you can see, like in the back, like some of my paintings, but it is really like my studio, and I do this, and sometimes like even with 48 by 48, it works really fine. I used to have a really big studio when I was by myself, but not anymore, you know, like now I'm in the basement, you know, like after marrying and getting like kids and stuff. So yeah, like I have some 48 by 48 like these showing here, and the minimum is like in this show is like 30 by 30. So between this and that, really like my sizes. I do enjoy really painting large. This is why I don't have problem with it, even though like I don't have much room like in the studio, but because I love it. Sometimes it's because like we do our best always when we like what we do, you know. So if I'm liking this, I do my best, you know, like. So it's working really fine. I even can go bigger, but I cannot. This is the maximum. If it's 1/8 of an inch bigger than this, I cannot get it out of the basement, you know. So this like works fine. And I'll just let the camera really like move around, you know, and enjoy just looking at the paintings, but like I will talk a little bit more like with the details of how the paintings are done, and like if anybody want to ask questions, about them, I'll be happy to try to answer that, you know.
Thank you, Kassem.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful exhibition.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So now we're heading into Nancy Neill's exhibition. Nancy?
Thanks, Mike and Tina. The work you are seeing is from a series called Feeling Red. And I'd like to start with a quote. Red is the ultimate cure for sadness, said fashion designer Bill Blass. I felt drawn to work on red paintings during the pandemic. It just made me feel better. And I'm the kind of person that likes to be upbeat and positive, and working with red and other warm colors just helped me do that. And while we all experience things differently, for me, red was a bit of an escape. It took me to a different place, a warmer place, more interesting, more energetic, maybe more passionate. So I decided to do a series of red paintings based on the feelings generated by the color red. And the work itself, I think you would consider non-objective. It's certainly very abstract, but you do see references to things in some of the work. There's a sense of windows and doors in some of them, maybe a feeling of looking out. There's a lot of marks that float on the surface, kind of like what you're looking at now. There's, circles and lines and other marks, and they perhaps suggest a happier time and place. And there's a great many layers of paint on the surface. There's a large buildup, and there's a lot of texture to the work. It's probably a little hard to see with a camera, but if you see them in person, you'll see there's a great deal of texture to the work. And there's also a lot of history. I use a palette knife to go back in to the surface, and you can see underneath the top layer suggestions of earlier layers there, which give a sense of history. There's also marks that I make with a palette knife. Some are sort of more underneath the surface. There's also marks on top of the surface. So there's a feeling of some marks receding, some things on top, a feeling of some space being created in the work, or a sense of depth, you might say. And a lot of the mark making, moves your eye around the painting. It gives you, I think, a feeling of some energy and moves you around. Each painting in the series is done with a little bit different shade of red or near red. And I think you would consider the work to be a color field type of painting, because it's really more about texture and a given color. There are other colors in each work, but they're used more as spices to enhance the color of red. I think of the work as playful and upbeat, joyful maybe. And I also noticed a lot of other artists working with red during the pandemic. And so it got me thinking, what is it about red? So I Googled red to see what other people have said about it. And I came up with loads of really amazing quotes. I'm just going to read a couple very short ones to give you a sense for what others have said. The first one is by the artist Anish Kapoor. Red, of course, is the color of the interior of our bodies. In a way, it's inside out. Or another quote, in my mind, I see all of my passionate memories in bright burning red, said Taylor Swift. Or one by Klaus Oldenburg, the sculptor. My mother warned me to avoid all things colored red. Or a fun one, put on your red shoes and dance the blues, said David Bowie. So you can see a lot of people think of red as fun, maybe slightly dangerous, passionate, warm, a very interesting kind of color. I'd like to just say a couple words too about the medium I'm using in the work here. This is a good example here, the one you're showing. All of the work in the show, except for one, is oil pastel on paper. And oil pastel is a slightly unusual medium, perhaps. It's not used all that much. Oil pastel was created in the mid 1900s for the artist Pablo Picasso. He wanted a wax color stick that had intense coloration and could be used on a variety of surfaces, would not fade, would not crack. So I thought it was a good medium to use for a series of intense coloration that would give me a lot of different shades of red and near red. And as I mentioned, I use many, many layers on the work. It's actually very physical to do that many layers of oil pastel. It takes a lot of energy at this scale. And the tool I use mostly is a palette knife to kind of scrape back in and create marks that are under the surface and on top. And the one work in the show that is not oil pastel, it was perhaps the largest one you saw in one of the earlier walls. It's acrylic and graphite on mylar, and it's been mounted on a wooden panel. And that one was really the start of the series. It was the first one I did that really got me thinking about red as a color that I really wanted to spend some time with. So that's kind of an overview of how the series came to be.
Thank you, Nancy. It's a wonderful body of work.
Thanks, Mike.
So now we're entering the exhibition of Jean Burdick. Hello, Jean.
Hi, Mike. My last series that I presented at Cerulean was in December of 2019, and it was a series based on photographs I had taken in New Orleans, capturing the different architectural details and elements of buildings and houses. After that, I started working with images from other cities, both in our country and internationally. And this series is not hung chronologically, but so I'll go on and explain how the series evolved over the past year and a half. I'm a painter and printmaker, and I use both processes to create prints, which could be considered monotypes or one of a kind. Also, I do not use a traditional form of registration. I create multiple screens, and then I compose them or almost collage as I'm printing with different parts of buildings and the architectural details. So the first 4 that you're seeing on this wall are more recent ones that were done in the past, let's say 9 months. The one we're looking at right now happens to be from images from Ocean Grove, New Jersey. And the print is a silk screen on vellum, meaning it's actually a layered print. There's a layer underneath of printed patterns or sometimes several patterns, and the top overlay is the vellum paper. And I've used both painting, silk screening, and also enhancing with some drawn elements. The very first one on the wall that you're seeing is from Titusville, New Jersey. And I'll be explaining why I ended up working more locally over the past year. So as we go on to the next wall, the first print, North 3rd Street, is a very important print for me. I was returning from a trip to the Poconos and spotted this building on the main street of a town, Hawley, Pennsylvania. And it reminded me of a bank on the main street of Columbia, Pennsylvania, a very small town near Lancaster where I grew up. And it brought back memories and experiences that I had there. When I returned later that day, the national news was saying that with the pandemic spreading in March, we were all going to be sheltering at home. So I knew that I'd be curtailing any kind of traveling and started exploring towns near me. I live in Yardley in Bucks County, so naturally Newtown, Pennsylvania, Doylestown, and I'm also close to New Jersey. So I went to Stockton, Frenchtown, Titusville, and Ocean Grove. And, you know, I would drive, get out, photograph a few things, come back, and then think of how I was going to be composing the prints. The next print to the right is called Sheltering at Home, and that's a silk screen on a panel. So I work on two different surfaces, sometimes the vellum paper, other times panels. And this print I was working on in the fall, and I hadn't titled it. I'm a member of Frontline Arts, which is a silk screening organization in Somerville, New Jersey. And they put out a call for a show, Resilience in Community. And I immediately thought of the title for this piece, Sheltering at Home, because I was thinking about the fall, going into the winter months. I was not looking forward to the prolonged sense of time, the darker feel that we were all experiencing, the silence on the streets, vacated, empty storefronts, and even the lack of any human activity as I would walk around and travel through the towns. So that then gave me the idea to title this series, Facades Closer to Home. The next one that we're coming to is another silk screen on vellum. So anything that's framed, you can see is the silk screen on vellum. On this one, I was thinking about a house that I had photographed in Doylestown, and I allowed the sky to show through different parts of the building about how our whole world, our house had become our whole world at that point with the way things were going. The next one is, this was one from following the series from New Orleans. So you can see how these series evolved over time. This was when I was doing composites of buildings. Silk screen is basically flat, so I like to create an illusion of depth by overlapping natural objects like trees, branches, excuse me, and even buildings. And the vellum actually helps to do that illusion of depth. This was one from, I think, Lambertville, New Jersey. To create the brick pattern, I was painting both on the surface of the vellum and on the reverse side of the vellum to create more of a brick-like texture. And the next wall, these are two panels that were done before the pandemic, following New Orleans, where I was photographing buildings in both Philadelphia and New York and combining those and making composite images from that. The gates also help the gates also help to create an illusion of depth in the image. The next one is a house that I saw on the way to Hawk Mountain in the fall. And it reminded me of a house structure that you would see anywhere in the United States. And again, thinking what's going on behind those windows and doors in everyone's houses. You're not seeing people outside. What's really happening there? This was in the fall, was a little lighter and brighter. These two are panels from houses from Stockton, New Jersey. Again, composites of several. And this was in the winter months with a more kind of somber palette, thinking about the time that we were all experiencing. The next one on vellum is a house from Doylestown, and I've overlapped trees from Yosemite National Park, thinking about how it's called Through the Clearing. That's the title, Through the Clearing. Thinking about how our houses had become a harbor or safe haven from the events we were hearing from the day. Okay. This panel called Willow Street followed Sheltering at Home. Again, thinking about the same color palette that I had worked with before, the more thinking about the earlier evenings coming in, the darker skies in the evening, and trying to express that in what I was creating and working with. And you can see the texture of the brick has a different appearance on a panel than it does when I'm working with the vellum paper and working with both sides. Now, the next few are very small. They're 5 by 7. I'm also a member of the Arts and Cultural Council of Bucks County. They put out a call for a show in the early summer. to create an image postcard size to promote Bucks County. And I created an image of the Thompson-Neely House, which is in the Washington Crossing side, Pennsylvania side of the Washington Crossing Park. And it sparked my interest, and it was a challenge. So I decided to go back and create some more, taking those larger images and kind of miniaturizing everything into some smaller prints. So I wasn't totally aware of my change in color or direction until I had that part where that time when I retitled that piece, Sheltering at Home. And in looking back over this, putting together the exhibit, it really hit home what had been happening over the past year and a half for me. There's two more small ones here, and then the one in the middle, which is larger, was a house from Silverton, Colorado. And again, I overlapped trees from Yosemite National Park for a feeling of depth in through that print. You know, this past year, I've been thinking a lot about the places I've lived, the experiences I've had. And I think all of us have stayed a lot closer to home this year. And this series really reflects my feelings and time during this period.
Thank you, Jean. It's a wonderful group of works. Now we are heading towards Michael Moore's exhibition.
Well, this is a vireo's. This drawing was made from a vireo's nest years ago, about, I'm going to say 40 years ago. A former student, Alan Bray, up in Maine, when I was teaching in Maine, gave me a vireo's nest that he had found on the ground in the woods near his home in central Maine. And I love this nest so much that I take it with me everywhere, because I looked at this nest and I said to myself, this is how I draw. I draw like this. The vireo put the nest together the way I draw. And it does honestly look like this. So I felt very close to it. Alan once asked me if I would give it back to him for a little while, and he did some beautiful drawings too. I was a little jealous, but they were very good. Then he gave it back. I said, Alan, I need it back. So it's comforted me. And any drawings that you see in this exhibition, I wouldn't say they come from the vireo's nest exactly, but they have a lot of the same graphic spirit or feeling. I often think I'm making a nest for myself, even though the work itself is non-representational or abstract in nature. And it's not explicitly a nest, but it might be a way to, I think, as Kassem said, he said, home is inside of us. And I feel as though there's a lot of feeling about the world in which we live inside of each of us. And as I draw, I look for the shapes and relationships that seem to me to be part of the world in which I live. So when people visit my studio and they say, Michael, is it okay if I see something in your work, or will you be offended? I'm not offended at all. I welcome it. And people often see things that I didn't know were there, but when they tell me, I see it. So I think that kind of, now this looks a little bit like one of the nests, actually, or like the nest, because this is pen and ink, and it's more delicately done. The previous drawing and some of the other ones are done with stick and ink. And I have used different kinds of sticks, but I like the chopsticks, not that are bamboo, because I can't cut those very well, but the other ones that are made out of like a balsa wood, I can take my knife and carve a shape to them. And they then surprise me with some of the things that come out. It's like a musician borrowing somebody else's instrument and realizing that they can play it, but it surprises them, and in that surprise they learn new things. So, you know, I feel if we were there together, I would turn to different people here who are in the group and I would say, what do you see here? What do you think is here? Like that big circle in the lower left here, I don't know what that is, but I really like it. And so I left it there. Right. I left it there. And the things that exist inside it, they seem very much womb-like. So I feel as though the rest of the drawing has kind of grown out from that shape. Those are the kinds of thoughts I have as I draw. Not so much thoughts, I have to say, I'll take it back. Feelings. And they're graphic feelings, feelings about form. Joanna, who's sitting next to me, just gestured to some of the things I had written down that I wanted to mention, and I keep forgetting. Now, this leaf drawing on the left, I really love that leaf. Seems to have a place to be within the whole drawing, as if the drawing is holding that leaf. And that's similar to the circle in the other drawing that was done with stick. Now, this is pen. And sometimes I like to just keep that delicacy. There are times when I like to be more bold with the pen or stick, and then other times I like to do a more delicate work. I'm sure there are equivalent feelings with all the color works we've seen. I know that there are, because we've talked about palette knife, and we've talked about the intensity of color, and we've talked about just the thickness of paint. And sometimes I feel as though the ink has a certain density to it. Like this little drawing has some real three-dimensionality about it, I think. And even though that looks like a bridge at the top, and I like that it does, it wasn't a bridge. It was just 3 lines that I stuck together because I wanted to connect the left side with the right side of the drawing. It's graphic activity. My hands tell my body what to do, and so I think my hands know more than I do. That's all I'll tell you. It's an odd feeling, but when I sit down to draw, I pick up a tool and say, okay, go ahead, hands. And then I just watch it. So I use my eyes to watch my hands work. And then sometimes I'll say, okay, my eyes have just told my hands to stop, or shut up. And so then I have to put the tool down and just look at the work for a while. I'm sure this is familiar pattern for everybody who's here, who makes drawings or paintings. As I told Kassem before, I was going to tease him and say, he taught me everything I needed to know about black and white. And sometimes when I look at the works that he's done in color, I think, if I worked in color, I would love to work like that. But I don't. I was originally a printmaker at Syracuse University, and when I was young, and I think it had a great effect on me. And I like some of the lines. Anyway, forgive me. But as I look at this, I can feel in my hand, I'm sure you could too, feel in your hand the making of this. It's like cooking, I think, a little bit. Making. I used to make apple pies. Real big, tall, full apple pies. And sometimes these drawings have the same full-bodied quality of those. Anyway, let's see. I've said, oh yes, I know what I wanted to say. More than. I wrote down the name more than. When I'm making a drawing, it's about drawing. It's actually not about the nest exactly. It's about drawing. I use the nest to make the drawing. I use the world to make a drawing, even though the drawing in the end is supposed to be, I hope, about the world and about the physicality of the world and bodies and natural phenomena. But I like the drawing to be a little bit more about drawing, or an integration of the drawing process with the nest itself. And I always, by the way, make an effort to end the drawing when there's an equal balance of black and white, even when there's a lot of gray in this drawing, lots of gray, but I think of it as a balance of black and white. I don't like the black to dominate the white or the white to dominate the black. I say, and it all comes out of ink. I mean, you know, everything's in the ink, honestly. We're all little ink dots, but all the drawings are in the ink I wrote here to myself. I draw them out. Ooh, look at this. No, I have to stop. Now that's a silkscreen that was printed by a friend of mine who had a studio in New York, printing studio. But I just gave him the drawing on tracing paper and he printed it. And he said, Michael, this is not just in black. There are 3 different blacks here. And so it's actually 3 different blacks that he printed. He had to print it 3 times. And I had a hard time seeing that, but he could see it. And he had a better eye for that than I did. This is quite a bit different. I have 3 different ones of these, which Mike and Tina have in the gallery. Oh my, well, look at that. Joanna, what would you like me to say? I know you're having, no, drawing has a nature of its own. Yes, it does. I'm being told. I wrote these things, but then you can't look at them, you know, when you're doing this. And besides, there's silly things you write. I love the show. I really do. And Michael and Tina, thank you so much. It's an honor. And I was thrilled. Tina said, how many works you want? And I said to her, and she said, 8 to 10. So I sent 19. And, you know, I just thought, the hell, I'll just do it. And I said, you don't have to hang them, but they did, you know, and so I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. These works have been done over the last 25 to 30 years. And I called it an introspective retrospective in ink, because it's really the ink that matters most in the end. You know, what can you do with ink? So,
maybe somebody has a question.
Thank you, Michael.
Done? Can I be done?
We're done. Yes, thank you.
I'm done, but not done for. Okay, good. Good.
So thanks to Michael and all the artists. So this ends the tour and talk portion, and we're going to open the breakout rooms momentarily. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention that we are open. So you can come and see the shows in person, Wednesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 6 p.m. And everything is also available on our website. So I put a link to the site in the chat for you to see. And also we do classes here. So Kassem will be doing a Zoom critique later this month, and Leah is going to do a hands-on encaustic workshop outside in our parking lot. So if you're interested, I'll put a link to the studio page on our website in the chat as well. So thanks again to everyone, and Tina's here now to open the breakout rooms.